now we will talk about the tools. So I'm sorry for this blurred image, I just realized. So it's basically pencil illustrations are there. You start, all of us have done that. We've all grown up, we started learning to write with pencils. We've learned drawing with pencils. Basic pencils help us in, having not very concrete forms, but also giving it much more depth. But if we focus on this image, you can see that there's a lot of texture out here. It's furry. So this is all because when you use pencil, it gives you that kind of freedom to create it. It also helps to have a smooth transition. So for example, you don't feel that it is pointed, but it's not poking you. It's very subtle. Are you understanding this? You can also illustrate with pen and ink. Now this is basically the ink we use in fountain pen. And you get special kinds of drawing inks also, which you can fill, and there are special pens for the same, where the nibs are of different widths and sizes, so you can use them to paint. This artwork is basically a pen and ink illustration, and this is not similar to the pen which we use this is a different kind of a pen and ink which we use. Wood cutting is a process which started in the medieval ages, where people would create things on a piece of wood. Now, this is how they would create it. Like, can you see this image out here? A block of wood, wherein the pattern where the artist wanted it to be white been left, it has been etched out. It has been removed. And the pattern which he wants to have colors on is the one which is left behind. So he has scooped out what is not needed in the frame, which is the negative space again. And the positive one is the one which is left behind. Put this roller in a bath of color, and then he has rolled it over this. And he has then used this wood as a block printing form, and he has placed it on a paper. So he need not paint it, of a lighter color to show that there's light falling. He just left it out there. So this is a beauty of the negative space, like Aaron pointed out. So basically, watercolor gives you that kind of, freedom, where you don't have to completely paint a picture, but you can sense of shadow or light effect. For example, out here also around his pants, you can see the same thing. There's extreme harsh light falling on him. Hence, you can feel that light is there, even out here. So there are subtle things in watercolor, and especially when it comes to shadow and highlights, like I mentioned also on the page, watercolor, nothing can beat watercolor more than that. Moving to acrylic, now this is again similar to watercolor, but the difference between acrylic and watercolor is that you cannot use acrylic on a normal paper. You have to use proper papers which come for acrylic painting, or you have to use canvases. And acrylic is basically the pigment which we use for acrylic painting, the color pigment which we use, the tubes which come, they are denser. So when you use them, they will give you a very thick color. Watercolor, you will see a lot of transparency, right? You can see a bit of the page surface coming up. You'll see it being a little lighter, darker, but in acrylic, it's completely flat. You'll see typically one color, and if you want to, give shade to it, like for example, the shade on the hills, you have to really use strong strokes on your canvas. Now we'll talk about digital illustration. I think everybody now is on digital platforms, and they want to, whether it's apps or it's softwares, we are all into that digital space. How many of you are aware of Adobe Photoshop? So for those of you who don't know, this is a software where you can edit photographs. You can also make digital illustrations. You can do photo manipulations. So a lot of things happen here, but this is a raster-based software. Now, the difference between raster and vector is basically that in vector, which is the images can be increased in size, and they will not lose the details. What happens with these softwares when you're working on these softwares, sometimes suppose you have to create a big poster with this software. So you'll have to be very mindful which software should you be working on or importing it into. So when you work on Photoshop, if you know it's going to be a very, the image will be on a it will increase and will have to be printed on a very big sheet of paper, you should be choosing your resolution accordingly. So this is, I'm getting in slightly in details, but the difference is that one is vector and one is raster, which is why there's there some people are inclined to work in only vector based softwares, and some are working towards raster based. But there's a advantage in raster that you can create more softer and detailed illustrations, whereas in vector, like you see out here, these two are vector illustrations. They are simpler. They could have had more colors also in them, but this is something which is communicating a simple idea through a simple form. This is a vector based illustration. With me on this? This is being created in Cinema 4D, which is like a 3D software. So you can create very lifelike forms in this. And this is created in Photoshop. So you see the details out here